Hi, my name is Burka Boy. You can call me BB for short. I'm wearing this outfit to protect myself and my family against religious fanatics that don't like the film we are about to make. This film is called Men Created Gods in Heaven, Women Paradise on Earth. What you can see in the background is Ground Zero and Manhattan. Manhattan is my home. That is where I live with my wife and my 4 children. That is also where religious fanatics flew perfectly good planes into perfectly good buildings and killed thousands of people in the name of their God. What if they would have been armed with a nuclear weapon? Scary, right? For the first time in history, the whole world is at risk to be destroyed by religious fanatics if they get their hands on weapons of mass destruction. We believe that an educated public is the best protection against this happening, and that is why we would like to make this movie. We need your help. The movie will show the history of all religions and that men indeed created all the gods we know, and it will also show that when women are truly equal in a society and allowed to participate in the development of that society, the result is a safe and clean place where education and the standard of living is high for everybody. In other words, a paradise on earth. We have put together for you 2 short clips to illustrate what the movie will be about. The first one takes us back to the Big Bang and a timeline of 200,000 years of human history. The second one shows a country that was the first one to give equal rights to women and that in 2010 was selected by Newsweek as the best place to live. In other words, a paradise on earth today. Good morning. It's the 21st century and we have the entire world at our fingertips, thanks to the internet, Google and the iPhone. But it is also in one sense the 61st century, as it is 6,000 years since men invented gods in the heavens, and as we will see still today, most of the problems we are facing are due to these religions. We are standing outside the United Nations in New York, where some 200 flags are flying in the wind, indicating that the UN is in session. The UN was created to be a forum where people could at least talk, if not find solutions, to the many problems the world has. The irony is that the same people who are here to talk and to solve the problems are the same people who have caused the problems, including the 41 armed conflicts the world experiences today. By taking a closer look at the flags that are flying here today, we can kind of identify the reasons for all the arguments and conflicts between people. Let's start with the Israeli flag, displaying the Star of David. The flag represents a country created some 70 years ago, and the flag sends the message that it stands for the values derived first and foremost from the Jewish religion and their holy scriptures. Their values are incompatible with the values of the Muslims that surround them, and hence violence continues to this day. Next, a close-up on the Finnish flag with its blue cross on a white background that tells a story of a country founded some 90 years ago in a time when Christian values and the holy scriptures of the Bible influenced this country and its people. The country today, according to Newsweek, is the last new paradise, the best place to live, while according to the New York Times, Finland is one of the most prosperous countries while also being one of the least religious countries on earth today. Finally, the 70-year-old Indian flag shows the saffron color representing Hinduism, which is the descendant of the Brahmanism religion, which is the eldest religion of all religions, and the green color that represents the youngest of the big religions, Islam. And in between the white color symbolizing the peace between these 2 groups that never materialized, and that have these 2 people positioned in a nuclear standoff in Kashmir, not too far from the location where the first civilization and religion started some 6,000 years ago. The conflict between the Palestinian Muslims and the Jewish Israelites, and the conflict between the Indian Hindus and the Muslim Pakistanis are just 2 examples of how religiously inspired values create conflicts. In Northern Ireland, Christian Catholics are at odds with Christian Protestants, and in Kosovo, Muslims and Serbian Greek Orthodox Christians could not live in harmony, and to solve their problems the UN called in the former president of Finland, Martti Ahtisaari, who then received the Nobel Peace Prize for finding a solution. Who are these Finns and where is this place called Finland? that now both Newsweek and the New York Times tout as the latest paradise.
In 2010, Newsweek magazine selected Finland out of the world's 200 countries as the best place to live, in essence, the latest paradise on Earth. The New York Times came to the same conclusion in a 2010 article which showed a correlation between religion and poverty, where Finland and all its neighbors showed up as the least religious countries and in the top for income per capita. That same year, the public education in Finland, which receives a tiny amount in comparison to that of public schools in the U.S., was once again recognized as its high school students again won the global competition in math and sciences. After years of equality also within the churches in Finland, 2010 reached a new milestone when the first female bishop was elected. Whether it is a lack of corruption or global social responsibility that is measured, Finland always shows up near the top. In 2008, Finland's former president, Martti Ahtisaari, received the Nobel Peace Prize for his former role in Namibia as well as Kosovo. The influence of women is strong behind the success of this tiny country of only 5 million people. In 2007, women made up 42% of the members of parliament and could also show that issues like AIDS, gun control, and teenage pregnancy were under control. And already in 1996, women had seized control of all the major leadership positions in parliament, and 4 years later, in 2000, Finland got its first female president. This small country that is situated in the northernmost part of Europe between Sweden and the west, Russia in the east, and Germany in the south, was a part of their tumultuous histories for 1,000 years until it obtained its independence from Russia in 1917. But even before Finland was an independent nation, women played an important role, and Finland was the first country in the world to give total suffrage to women already in 1906.
But first, let's see what one of these religiously inspired conflicts really look like. We didn't have to travel far, only 15 minutes by taxi, and we were here at Ground Zero, where human beings flew perfectly good planes into perfectly good buildings in an act of suicidal terrorism. The people were not pot-smoking peaceniks from Holland or evil atheists from Wisconsin. They were Muslims, misguided by their holy scriptures that told them to kill as many infidels as they could in the name of their God. Today the new buildings are rising, but a few blocks away we can see for ourselves the hate between religions that take the form of people who support building a Muslim cultural center close to Ground Zero, and people who oppose this religious building are at odds with each other. Isn't it ironic that all the world's major religions claim to provide mankind with good, moral, and humane values, and yet all their holy scriptures, the Vedas, the Old and the New Testament, and the Quran, advocate killing anybody who does not agree with them and their message? Before we take off to Finland to see this latest paradise, let's have a look at how organized religions all got started and how we got to the point where we are today.
Our forefathers evolved some 2.5 million years ago, and our own history starts only 200,000 years ago. This is when Homo sapiens evolved in Africa. Our forefathers then migrated out of Africa, all over the world, and finally as far up north as the Arctic Circle and the North Pole, where they settled down 36,000 years ago when the climate there was warmer. 10,000 years ago, the glacial period ended, and the white-skinned Aryan people who lived above the Arctic Circle, in what is today the northern territories of Finland, started moving south, and arrived in the paradise of their dreams 7,000 years ago, where they encountered their black-skinned Dravidian counterparts that had migrated north from Africa, that in turn was turning dry and inhospitable because of the same climate change. The Aryans and the Dravidians met in paradise by the monsoon rivers of Sarasvati and Hagar, and created together the Harappan civilization. The Sanskrit language, the caste system, the holy scriptures of the Vedas, and the first pantheon of deities that described the awe they had for the monsoon climate. The priests invented a creator god called Brahma, who brought water to his river wife, the goddess Sarasvati. a god called Vishnu who maintained the rivers at peace for a while, and finally the destroyer god Shiva, who dried up the rivers, until Brahma again brought the massive rains and started the next cycle. This first paradise existed 6,000 years ago, and according to several historians, the Jewish people descended from these Brahmin priests. These Brahmin Jewish priests moved to the city of Ur, in Iraq, 5,600 years ago, where they created their story about how a new god had created this paradise and the first humans, Adam and Eve, as well as a talking snake 5,771 years ago. The reason these Brahmin priests left this first paradise was because it was destroyed in a massive flood. For thousands of years, the story of this first paradise was dismissed by the British overlords as just a story until it was found with the help of satellites by the Indians themselves in 2002. The satellite showed that the Harappan civilization and the rivers have been destroyed in a flood and an earthquake, which then must have inspired the Akkadians to write the story of Gilgamesh 5,500 years ago. The eldest translated story known to mankind that was then the foundation for the story of Noah's Ark later in the Bible. This is where the Bible catches up and tells us about the Brahmin priest, Taruk, who made Shiva idols out of clay and who named his son Abram after Brahma 5,400 years ago. Abram, of course, became Abraham, who married Sarai, named after Sarasvati, who became Sarah. He also took Hagar, named after Hagar, as his concubine, and he had 2 sons, Isaac and Ishmael. That in Sanskrit translates to Ish-Aku and Ish-Mahal, which means the great Shiva and the friend of Shiva. Still today, the Jews call it sitting Shiva when they mourn a dead close friend or relative. In the same way Judaism borrowed from Brahmanism, Christianity would borrow their Old Testament from the Jews and their Christ birth story from the Egyptian god Horus, who was born on December 25th, 5,500 years ago, from a virgin who had turned water into wine, healed cripples, and raised people from the dead, before he was crucified and resurrected on the 3rd day. The Muslims, of course, built their religion on the stories of Judaism and Christianity, and they recognized both Abraham and Jesus. In Asia, the Buddhists, the Sikhs, and the Hindus all stand on the shoulders of Brahmin teachings, and also Zoroaster in Persia 2,600 years ago was inspired by Brahmanism. Religion started to lose its grip on people some 200 years ago, and here in the U.S., Thomas Jefferson created his own version of the Bible. In Iran, the Baha'i religion tried 150 years ago to bring all believers under one roof. And in Finland, 150 years ago, 2 old ladies called Natalia and Edith Maria created what they called good and humane rules that contributed to making Finland into the latest version of a paradise with a high standard of living and a safe society. In 2010, a paradise is a peaceful place where women are equal to men, where education and the standard of living are high, and where religion has lost its grip on people, according to Newsweek and the New York Times in their separate articles. Isn't it ironic that the Aryan people who were instrumental in creating the first paradise are at it again 6,000 years later in their homeland, Finland?
Now let's take a trip to Finland and India to see for ourselves both the first and the latest paradise.
Move to Finland.
I can see clear